is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: a major police operation in England, 3 people killed in the city of Nottingham in knife and van attacks. A man is arrested on suspicion of murder. Our other headlines: former US President Donald Trump is set to appear in court charged with keeping White House documents relating to nuclear, military and intelligence secrets.
We're outside the court in Miami. The cameras allowed inside, but Donald Trump is protesting his innocence. He says that this case amounts to election interference.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas begins a visit to China as Beijing seeks a larger role in Middle East diplomacy.
New technology is moving at warp speed, and so are the threats that come with it.
And a warning from the United Nations on the dangers of artificial intelligence as the European Union debates regulation. British police say a man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people died in what they're calling a major incident in Nottingham city centre. Another 3 people were injured in a separate attack where a man and a van attempted to drive into them. Police believe the incidents are linked. Several roads have been closed and public transport services suspended. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Yolo Abdabith, who's in Nottingham. Yolo, what more do we know? What more can you tell us?
Well, we know that the police, of course, are still investigating. There's a 31-year-old man that's been arrested, and he is in custody now. He was arrested quite soon after the incidents. There were, it seems to me, 3 separate incidents. One on Ilkeston Road, which was the first one, where 2 bodies were found. Then an attempted, 3 people were attempted in terms of being run over here on Milton Street behind me. And another body was found on a separate street, another street in the middle of Nottingham. Now, just in front of me, the centre of Nottingham looks almost as normal. Traffic, people, shoppers, public transport. But a number of the main roads in the middle of the city have been closed off. I think also what the police are looking at and how they're conducting this investigation has moved into gear very, very quickly. Joint operations with the emergency services and the police, and they've been conducted together. And it seems at the moment that they are obviously questioning this suspect. One person which has been injured is critically injured and ill in hospital, while other people are also receiving attention. But the investigation now is continuing in terms to try and find out what happened and why did it happen.
Is there any indication of a motive?
Very difficult to try and answer that, to be honest, at the moment, because all the police say is that the investigations are ongoing. They don't seem to be, even though counter-terrorism officers are here, even though counter-terrorism officers have actually conducted searches in some properties in Nottingham, it doesn't seem at the moment to reflect the kind of attacks that have been labelled as terrorist attacks that we have seen in other parts of Europe and in the UK in the past. You don't get a sense at the moment from the police that the detectives who are in charge of this investigation, cooperating as they are with different agencies, that they are looking at that. So it's far too early, of course, to make assumptions, far too early to speculate, but it seems that the police are obviously interrogating the person that they have arrested, and they are still looking at other properties. So far too early in terms of trying to define what may have been the motive.
Do you get any sense, Yolo, where the police investigation goes from here?
No, the police are being very careful and guarded in what they say. They've released statements. They've said that this is obviously a shocking incident in the middle of Nottingham. I mean, Nottingham isn't a small provincial town. It is, you know, the 9th largest city in the United Kingdom. There are 50,000 students here. There is a young population here in terms of students and young people in school, and there have been reports of certain levels of crime which the police and the local community are aware of. And I think it's indicative in terms of the police investigation that all we're hearing from the local parliamentarians, the local councillors, is that they are supporting the police and letting the police get on with the business of trying to find out why. For the time being, all these roads which are closed, like Milton Street behind me, they will remain closed. There's no plans at all, at the moment at least, while this investigation continues, to reopen and allow people to go wherever they like, as indeed they are in other parts of the city.
Yolo, thank you for that. Our correspondent Yolo Abdavid in Nottingham. Now the rest of the day's news. And Ukraine says at least 10 people have been killed and dozens others injured after a Russian missile attack on the city of Kryvyi Rih. The strikes hit several civilian buildings in the city, which is the hometown of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Rescuers are continuing to search through the rubble for survivors. Meanwhile, Ukraine has asked Australia to supply more details about the condition of 41 F-18 fighter jets stored at a Sydney airbase. Kyiv is reportedly eyeing a potential weapons transfer that could significantly boost its air power. Ukraine recently won the United States approval to acquire American-made aircraft. And Russia says it has repelled Ukrainian attacks in the Donetsk region. The country's defense ministry also released video of what it says is a captured German-made Leopard tank filmed in southern Ukraine. Meanwhile, a pro-Russian military blogger says a top Russian general has been killed after a Ukrainian missile strike in the Zaporizhzhia region. Donald Trump will appear in court in the coming hours, the first former United States president to face federal criminal charges. He's accused of unlawfully retaining top-secret papers after leaving office and lying to officials who tried to recover them. Over 100 documents with classified markings were found at Mr. Trump's Florida estate in August. Some of the paperwork was about nuclear, military and intelligence briefings, including briefings on foreign countries. The former president has denied any wrongdoing. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Benji Hire, who's watching events for us in Miami. Benji, just talk us through the timetable. What are we expecting, do you think, in court today?
Well, in about 5 hours' time, Donald Trump will enter the courtroom behind me for his second arraignment in a little over 2 months. On this occasion, facing charges and becoming the first former president to face federal charges. As you said, he stands accused of, well, it's 37 felony counts in all to the retention.
Well, I'm terribly sorry about that. We seem to have lost the line to Miami and our correspondent Benji Hire, but we will return to those proceedings surrounding former President Donald Trump later in the hour. In the meantime, we'll carry on with the rest of today's news. India's western state of Gujarat and southern parts of Pakistan are bracing for Cyclone Biparjoy, expected to make landfall later this week. Classified as a severe cyclonic storm, it's expected to land between Gujarat and Karachi with wind speeds of up to 150 kilometers an hour. Fishing boats have been called back to shore and oil companies told to move offshore rig workers to safety. Efforts to move 80,000 people in Pakistan are now already underway. Japan's Prime Minister has announced measures to try to boost the country's dwindling birth rate. Fumio Kishida says the economy is in danger due to its aging population. The government aims to double overall spending on childcare by the year 2030, with increased payouts to families with children and more flexible working. The announcement has fueled speculation of a snap general election. 3 times United States Olympic medalist Tori Bowie has died from complications relating to childbirth, her agent has confirmed. The sprinter died at the age of 32 at a Florida home in May. She was around 8 months pregnant and in labour at the time of her death. Romanian prosecutors have strengthened charges against internet personality Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan. The 2 British Americans and 2 others are being investigated for human trafficking in a continued form. That's a more serious crime than separate counts of trafficking. The offence carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. The Tate brothers, who are currently under house arrest, deny all of the charges. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Drink more beer and save the planet. The Texas Brewing Company capturing CO2 emissions.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. A major police operation in England, 3 people killed in the city of Nottingham in knife and van attacks. A man is arrested on suspicion of murder. Our other headlines: the former United States President Donald Trump is to appear in court charged with keeping White House documents relating to nuclear, military and intelligence secrets. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has arrived in China for his state visit. This comes after Beijing said it's ready to help facilitate peace talks in the Middle East. Our correspondent Feng Yilei reports.
President Abbas has visited China several times and was referred to as an old and good friend of the Chinese people by Foreign Ministry spokesperson ahead of his state visit. And he's also the first Arab leader of state to be received by China this year. And notably, both sides are also expected to explore ways for advancing the peace process between Palestine and Israel. As we await their upcoming meetings, it is important to note that China has been a long-standing supporter of the Palestinian cause. And President Abbas' visit to China follows President Xi's visit to Saudi Arabia last year, where he met with Abbas and pledged to work towards an early, just and durable solution to the Palestinian issue. And China has also expressed its willingness to aid in the negotiation process, with Foreign Minister Qin Gang in April telling his Israeli and Palestinian counterparts that Beijing was ready to help. And China was among the first countries to recognize the Palestine Liberation Organization and the State of Palestine. China has also consistently supported the Palestinian people's just cause of restoring their legitimate national rights. And as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, China remains committed to working with the international community to find a comprehensive and just solution to the Palestinian issue. China's commitment to promoting peace and stability demonstrate that this visit holds significant importance for not just both countries, but also the region. Feng Yilei, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, let's talk to Frank Lowenstein, U.S. Special Envoy for Middle East Peace under President Barack Obama. Frank, good to see you. Welcome. Just how significant is the Palestinian president's visit to China, do you think?
Well, I think on the one hand, it's first of all, thank you very much for having me. On the one hand, I don't think it's especially significant in the sense that it's, I think, Abbas's 5th state visit to China. China has long suggested they have an interest in helping to resolve this conflict. They've offered host conferences. They've put forth various peace plans. So I think on that count, it's more or less business as usual. But the context is different than it's been in the past, and I think that's what makes this significant. China's obviously looking to play a greater role in the Middle East. I think they see an opportunity here, building on the China, their role in the Iran, Saudi Arabia rapprochement to really increase their profile and visibility in the region. I think it's a good message for them to be on the side of the Palestinians for that purpose. So I can see what is in it for China, what's significant from China's end. And I think for the Palestinians, it's suggestive of the fact that they really don't have a lot of hope in the United States or in the conventional modes of trying to resolve the conflict that I was involved in under President Obama. So yeah, the substance is more or less the same, but the context is different.
What would a good outcome or a good agreement look like arising from this visit?
So I think the most likely outcome is a strong statement of support coming from President Xi and from the Chinese leadership. I think that'll be very valuable to the Palestinians. I think they're looking to broaden out their base of support. Abbas was visiting with President Putin in October, and I think they're looking to the global south and some of the other countries who are non-traditional players in this conflict to provide them the support that they don't believe that they're getting from the United States and from the West as much as they would like to have. And so I think on that count, there's opportunities for President Abbas to bring more allies to the table. In terms of outcomes, though, I would be very surprised if anything emerged with respect to the peace process itself. I think you might see greater assistance from the Chinese to the Palestinians. They only give $2 or $3 million a year, which is relatively low. I think you may see some agreements with respect to trade. I know the Belt and Road Initiative is something the Chinese are trying to advance whenever possible. So I would think statements, trade agreements, expressions of support for building infrastructure and that kind of thing, those would be the most likely outcomes from this, rather than anything directly related to the peace process.
And I wonder, to what extent do China's expanding economic interests in the Middle East, particularly its focus on energy resources and so on, shape its political engagement and influence in the Middle East?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge part of it. And I think that their relationship with Saudi Arabia is very much indicative of that. And I think that's really where you might find the most direct tie-in to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Saudi Arabia, normalization with Israel is obviously a big priority for the United States. It's a big priority for Israel. And to the extent to which the Chinese can be on the side of the Palestinians there, can use their influence with the Saudi Arabians to make sure that Saudi keeps the Palestinian conflict front of mind when they're talking about a normalization with Israel. I think that would be probably an objective that President Abbas would have that would fit very much with what the Chinese are trying to achieve in the region.
Frank, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Frank Lowenstein, the US Special Envoy for Middle East Peace under Barack Obama.
Thanks.
China's premier has met the president of Honduras in Beijing. The two governments have signed a memorandum of understanding as Honduras prepares to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, the multi-billion-dollar global infrastructure program. The two countries have also agreed to strengthen economic cooperation with Beijing, approving the import of Honduran bananas and coffee beans. The United States military says 22 service members have been injured in what they described as a helicopter mishap in Syria. They said the incident is being investigated, but no enemy fire was involved. There are around 900 US troops in Syria as part of a mission fighting the remnants of the Islamic State group. The Golden Globe Awards has been sold off. The takeover will see the shutdown of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, whose members decided which films and television shows to award. This comes after the association faced allegations of corruption and racism, which led to a boycott last year. The new owners say they will continue to manage the show's broadcasting and focus on expanding the audience. A custody battle has broken out over the 4 children who survived for 40 days alone in the Amazon rainforest following a plane crash. The children's maternal grandparents want to care for the children after their mother died in the crash. However, the father of the 2 youngest children, who's facing accusations of domestic violence, also wants custody. Colombian authorities say they're talking to all sides to decide who should care for the children. Now, who's going to regulate artificial intelligence? EU lawmakers are hoping to pin down legislation this week. MEPs are currently debating new rules to regulate the sector. And our correspondent Mark Webster reports now from Brussels.
It's the dizzying speed with which artificial intelligence systems are evolving that has alarmed the authorities here in Brussels. The EU believes there is an urgent need for a legal framework which would identify those areas which pose a real threat to people's health, safety or fundamental rights. However, critics of the legislation say the problem with some computer technology is that it's changing so fast any laws would be out of date by the time they're agreed. The AI Act proposes to classify AI systems based on their level of risk, ranging from low to unacceptable. This will in turn mean companies will have different levels of legal responsibilities. Unacceptable AI tools will be banned, where high-risk AI, like the kind used in critical infrastructure, law enforcement and education, will probably be required to conduct risk assessments, log their activities and make data available to authorities to scrutinise. Others argue that establishing a benchmark for responsibly operated AI will reassure the public and ensure a degree of quality control.
I think companies will have to. I think it's, in a way, it's a bit like a lot of people would not go to a restaurant that hasn't passed health code. In the future, I believe that will be the same with artificial intelligence. You'll see that people are not going to go to a company that hasn't passed the conformity assessment.
It has been the remarkably speedy development of systems like ChatGPT which has galvanised lawmakers here. Its computer programs can already answer questions plausibly, write essays, summaries and stories which sound natural and can even generate computer code. The United Nations chief has warned that an international body is needed to regulate the fast-changing technology.
New technology is moving at warp speeds, and so are the threats that come with it. Alarm bells over the latest form of artificial intelligence, generative AI, are deafening.
While the majority of MEPs are thought likely to back the legislation, there has been the usual behind-the-scenes haggling about the details. Some are unhappy about the use of facial recognition software in public places, while other parties want to make sure that it's still available for the investigation of serious crimes. The Parliament is expected to vote on the issue later this week, but given the pace of technological change, experts say the legislation will have to be revisited in the future. Mark Webster, CGTN, Brussels.
Deadlines and targets have been set by governments all over the world to try to reduce fossil fuel emissions. Most experts agree that a range of technologies are needed, including the capture of carbon dioxide. In May, the United States government committed $250 million to fund carbon capture and storage projects across 7 states. Our correspondent Tony Waterman reports.
So there is beer in all of these tanks?
There is. So this one, for example, right now, active fermentation.
It's not just beer Clinton Mack is brewing up at Austin Beer Works. This is one of the few breweries in the U.S. capturing the carbon dioxide naturally produced during fermentation. Upwards of 10 pounds of the heat-trapping gas can be collected in an hour. Gas that would normally be vented into the atmosphere.
Smells like beer.
Yep. Smells like yeast.
Once collected, it's sold, but the long-term goal is to reuse it to give their beer its iconic fizz.
It's a resource that up until now, we weren't taking advantage of. It's just being wasted. The more people that do this, not only does it make sense fiscally because you're saving money by creating and capturing your own resource, but then it helps to get us out of the oil industry as much as possible. We can just see the process of where it goes.
This machine from Earthly Labs does most of the heavy lifting. The company, started in 2016, now has more than 100 clients around the world. Founder Amy George says the carbon capture, utilization, and storage economy, or CCUS, has exploded in recent years, spurring new innovations and entrants to the market.
An example might be a biogas company that is taking a waste product from a dairy manufacturer and then converting that to energy. With new regulations and technology, we can help them capture it, harness it, and then sell it as a byproduct in the CO2 market.
And that market is primed to expand exponentially in coming years as countries and companies aim for carbon neutrality by mid-century. According to the consultancy firm Woods Mackenzie, global CCUS uptake needs to expand 120 times if countries are to meet their current net zero commitments, requiring $150 billion in annual investment over the next decade. The Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. is trying to accelerate adoption, offering tax credits of up to $85 a ton for carbon captured at the source and up to $180 for carbon pulled directly from the air and sequestered.
This is a pilot plant, which is where we test the technology at a scale that's...
Professor Gary Rochelle has been researching and building carbon capture technology for more than 20 years. He says the incentives are crucial to persuade heavy polluting industries to adapt, but they may not be enough.
The $85 a ton is maybe enough for a few plants, but it won't be enough for major applications. And incentives can be, hey, we'll pay you to do it. Incentives can be, hey, you got to do it. There's no silver bullet technology for addressing global warming.
Experts say producing fewer emissions should be the ultimate goal. But for now, capturing carbon at both the large and small scale could help offset industries that may never, on their own, be carbon neutral. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Austin, Texas.
It was once thought to be lost to history. Now a rare Buddha statue from the 12th century China has sold in Paris for $2.2 million. The family who owned it for generations had been unaware of its significance or its value. Our correspondent Natalie Malhas reports.
This impressive wood figure represents a male deity, seated in a contemplative pose with an omnipresent glass gaze. It dates back to the 12th century Jin dynasty and is surprisingly still largely intact.
Today what we see is only the remains of something that was much more impressive, but you still see the detailing, and it is very, very rare for a figure of this size to survive. And what makes it so special is that it's more or less complete. It has the head, the torso, and the head is one piece. And you can still get a sense of the magnificence of this whole group of figures that were, at some point, in a temple.
It was once part of an elaborate 38-piece collection, originally made to adorn important Buddhist temples in northern China.
For us and for the collectors and for Chinese people, even if they're not collectors of wood figures, this is a very important figure because it's compassionate. And you can see when you look at the face, it's a benevolent face, it's a kind face, and it's called the Bodhisattva of compassion because he looks down and he listens to people suffering. And you can really sense it, you get an idea of it. So it's quite remarkable that it has survived and is still here after all these years.
The relic made its way back onto the market last year, after a French family offered to give up the historic heirloom that's been passed down through the generations since 1935. They were unaware of the sculpture's value.
It was always in a prominent position, but it was not in a place where people knew what they had. They did not know what it was. It was special, but they didn't know exactly. It was Chinese, Asian. So in a way, to find out from this ad that actually there was a value, a commercial value to a piece like this, and to find out how early it was because it had a date, that was the biggest surprise, I think, for them.
There's been a great deal of interest in the statue, with experts saying there are only a handful of similar pieces left, mostly owned by museums.
Bidders joined the Paris auction from all across the world, with some even pitching in online. After a fierce contest, the sale was locked in at over $2 million. The statue's destination remains a mystery for now, but some believe it was probably snapped up by a buyer looking to take it back home to China. Natalie Malhas, CGTN, Paris.
The headlines again. A major police operation in England. 3 people killed in the city of Nottingham in knife and van attacks. A man is arrested on suspicion of murder. Former US President Donald Trump is to appear in court charged with keeping White House documents relating to nuclear, military and intelligence secrets. And the Palestinian president begins a visit to China as Beijing seeks a larger role in Middle East diplomacy. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. From all of us in London, goodbye.